Everywhere I go, people are talking about this, and they all seem very, very excited for what the future has to offer. Vietnam coming for China's electronics supply chain. Vietnam poised to win from next phase of China decoupling, but there is no time to waste in upskilling its labor force. This is true. I work in education here in Vietnam, and there is a huge push for technical and global skills. It's happening right now, and there's a snowball effect that is happening. When one company announces that they're going to move production here, it seems like three other ones are following suit. Vietnam currently benefits from China's COVID-19 lockdowns and the geopolitical tensions between the United States and China, especially in electronics manufacturing. The country flirted with its own zero-COVID policy and lockdowns in 2021, but changed course quickly to have 2/3 of its population vaccinated by December 2021. Now, I was in China during this time, and it was a tough time. And I have friends who were in Vietnam during this time, and they said it was also a tough time, but it was a very short time. They quickly realized that this zero COVID thing wasn't working, and it was devastating the economy. So they turned it around and said, look, we have an opportunity here. Let's capitalize on it. Very, very astutely. News leaked that Apple would move its iPad production from China to Vietnam in June 2022. China's Xiaomi also moved the production of some of its devices to Vietnam in June 2021. Thanks to investments by DBG Technology, a subsidiary of Hong Kong's DBG Electronics Investment Limited. Samsung, an early entrant into Vietnam, invested in a $670 million manufacturing plant in the northern province of Bắc Ninh in 2014. It increased its investment to $17.3 billion nationwide in a little over a decade. Intel, another early entrant, opened a $1 billion semiconductor assembly and testing facility in Ho Chi Minh City in 2006. It made additional investments in 2019 and 2020, taking a total of $1.5 billion. Indeed, all this foreign direct investment gave rise to the popular saying that the US-China trade war is over and Vietnam is the winner. It's not just Vietnam, by the way. I mean, yeah, there's a lot going on here, but it's really all of ASEAN. It's Malaysia, it's Thailand, it's Indonesia, it's the Philippines, it's all of it, really. Between 2010 and 2020, exports of electronics, computers, and components from Vietnam grew at an average annual rate of 28.6%. Wow. With double-digit growth even in the years prior to the US-China trade tensions and COVID-19 lockdowns. That was chiefly the result of domestic reforms in the mid-2000s, namely the 2005 Enterprises Law and the 2000 Investment Law. These regulations, fully implemented in 2015, allow foreign firms to acquire majority shareholdings in domestic enterprises. That enables Vietnam to participate in the global parts and components trade, as foreign firms in these production networks are no longer interested in joint ventures with local companies. They would prefer to become owners to control quality and ensure the timely delivery of goods. Yet another aspect of the competition that's happening between all of the ASEAN countries and China. They're always looking to one-up each other to create a more business and investment-friendly environment. And the results speak for themselves. The cost of doing business in Vietnamese cities were significantly lowered in the mid-2000s, making Vietnam regionally competitive. FDI grew rapidly and was supercharged by the so-called China Plus One strategy pursued by multinationals, particularly in electronics. As an exporter of electronics, Vietnam jumped from 47th in 2001 to 10th in 2020, with an export value equal to 1.8% of the global value of electronic exports. The question is whether this rapid growth is sustainable in terms of Vietnam's evolving comparative advantages, and if Vietnam can entrench its position as a global manufacturing hub in electronics. I think they will. I mean, there's so much long-term investment in the infrastructure, in the manufacturing infrastructure. We're not just talking about buildings. We're talking about education. We're talking about the supply chains that flow into this. We're talking about transportation infrastructure, favorable financial incentives. All of this growth is really a result of all of that. And as more comes in, it's going to establish a larger market share. And as we all know, once you have market share, you don't want to lose it. So they're going to do everything they can to continue to keep this market share in place and continue to grow it. Lower labor costs are an obvious advantage for Hanoi. Hourly manufacturing labor costs in China and Vietnam rose between 2016 and 2020, but they rose more slowly in Vietnam. In 2020, Vietnam's manufacturing labor costs were about half that of China. Commercial electricity rates were 3 cents less in Ho Chi Minh City than in Shanghai, while the time taken to obtain an electricity connection was 1 day faster for firms and households. Other administrative reforms include improving the efficiency of tax filing and reduced overall tax rates by 2%. The only significant tax for large foreign high-tech corporations is the corporate income tax, which is 5 to 7% lower than in China. These corporations also get up to 4 years of corporate tax exemptions. Vietnam's government has been proactive and apparent success in promoting foreign investment in electronics manufacturing and enmeshing Vietnam in global production networks. But longer-term issues need to be resolved to entrench the country as a high-tech manufacturing hub. Much of the electronics manufacturing in Vietnam currently focuses on midstream activities in the supply chain, the assembly of finished products for export by foreign companies. Upstream activities such as product design and subcomponent production take place in other countries. The United States and South Korea often complete product design while China does subcomponent production. Downstream activities such as sales and distribution also take place overseas. This explains why Vietnam's value added to manufacturing export is, on average, only 55%, to the extent that a significant component of electronics exports is not local. Vietnamese firms cannot take full advantage of free trade agreements such as the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement finalized in 2019. To move up the value chain, Vietnam urgently needs to upscale its labor force. That will potentially provide footloose foreign companies with the skilled labor they need to expand production. Yes, I work in education here in Vietnam. I came to this country because I saw the writing on the wall that this is what Vietnam needs, and they will be investing in this sector to upskill its labor. It will enable the local production of electronic components so that expertise can be developed within the country to cope with the new designs and devices that parent companies bring to market. The expertise gap is currently being filled by expatriates and some Viet Cruise returning from overseas. Some small South Korean component manufacturers are moving to Vietnam to supply Samsung, but this short-term measure cannot replace education and training. The need for upskilling is recognized by the Vietnamese government in its social and economic development strategy for 2021 to 2030, but the government is missing a sense of urgency, concrete steps, and quantified targets. While Vietnam's average length of schooling is 10.2 years, second only to Singapore within ASEAN, the tertiary school enrollment rate was 28.6% in 2019. Out of an estimated 6.9 million people of tertiary education age in Vietnam, just under 2 million are enrolled in tertiary studies. This figure needs to double to 3.8 million for Vietnam to be in the same league as other upper middle income countries within 15 to 20 years. With Vietnam's favorable demographics forecasted to end by 2040, there is no time to waste in upskilling its population. So, there you have it. This is what's going on. Vietnam is just one of many countries here in ASEAN trying to capitalize on what's going on in the greater region here in East Asia. What do you think? Comment below, let it be known.